Great. Well, it's 12 o'clock, so I think maybe we should get started, because I'm aware that people might be on their lunch breaks or might be short of time, and we have got quite a bit of stuff to get through. So let's get straight into it. So you might not have seen my face before. My name's Sophie, and I'm the marketing manager for Vevox, and the education team kindly invited me to kind of join along and take part with you guys today. So first, thank you for having me. And I'm going to be facilitating the discussion and the session today. So as I mentioned, it's going to be 40 minutes long, so just a bit longer than normal, so we can allow a bit of time for some Q&A. And it is going to be an interactive session. As always, with any of our webinars, we want you to join in. We want to hear what you think. So obviously, we've got the Vevox app open, so you can put in your comments and questions. Today, it's going to be a panel session where we're talking about our education team, who are our panelists. So Joe, Amie and Izzy are going to be talking about how they've seen Vevox being used to support online classes. Obviously, there's been lots of changes and things happening with the pandemic, and there's been some successes, there's been some learnings that we've had and our customers have had, and we kind of wanted an opportunity to talk around what our customers have been seeing and experiencing and how they've been using Vevox alongside other technology. So yeah, we do want you to share your ideas and comments and questions as we go along, so please do enter them into the Vevox app. Just to repeat for you, go to vevox.app on your smartphone and type in the meeting ID 194515139, or use your camera to scan the QR code. So I think what we're going to do to kick off is we're going to run a poll, and we want to ask you, how are you feeling about teaching in September with the situation that's going on? Obviously, there's been a lot happening. And we'd just like to hear from you, what your thoughts and feelings are about teaching in September.
I liked how the first two words that came in were nervous and excited.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit how I feel today.
Yeah. It's mixed. I think kind of my expectation is that there's a real two different ends of the spectrum, and some people are going to be somewhere in between. But yeah, challenged, definitely. Quietly confident. I like that. Whoever that is, that's amazing. Great. Okay, we've got 50 people on the app, so we'll wait for just a few more responses, and then we'll let's get to 35. Come on, let's see if we can get 35 responses, just so we can get a really good idea. That'll be great.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is good. Okay. I think we'll stop that there, just so we can get a good snapshot. But I think it definitely is interesting to see that there is such a mix, and I think that's kind of what we've been experiencing. And the last few months have definitely been challenging for all of us as a business, as well as hearing from our customers and from our community. And we've been very much trying to walk through those times with our customers. Amie, I know we've been talking as a group, but you've kind of been trying to collate some of those experiences and thoughts as to what people have been sharing with you guys. So do you want to kind of talk us through what you've been experiencing and what our customers have been telling you?
Yeah. Well, we were sort of saying how we started nearly 3-4 months ago now, back in March, how we started sort of the period at a large event at DigiFest, 700 people attending. We weren't shaking hands, we were wobbling elbows and shaking feet. I know Adam's online. We definitely had a foot wobble at each other. And it was a very different place to where we are now, and can't imagine being in an environment of 700 people at a conference. But shortly after that, things started to change rather rapidly, and what we were seeing from our customers was sort of confusion and concern, and universities were starting to close, or some were moving on to online, but the campuses themselves were just closing. But people were quite reactionary, and obviously having to put in some emergency planning generally for how you were going to deliver exams. But April, May, we saw sort of behaviors change. I mean, for us personally, we still weren't getting a lot of interaction with our customers, because you were sort of having to prioritize your work, quite overwhelmed with what was happening, and really sort of coping mechanisms coming into play, you know, and all of these sort of emotions were things that, you know, I would say we would mirror, you know, within our company. But what we've started to see, you know, in June is a much clearer picture. There's still a lot of time pressure that people are under, but people are starting to evaluate more, you know, what they need to implement for September, and we're getting a lot of people, a lot more inquiries coming in. I mean, actually over the whole period, we've had a really high level of signups, much higher than we've had in past years, and actually quite a spike in signups. But people are already planning what they're trying to do for September. On an individual level as lecturers, you know, they're looking at tools and thinking about how they can successfully deliver their sort of online learning. I mean, obviously the approaches at different universities are different, and the tools that you use will be different. But at a institutional level, we're getting a lot more inquiries now, and people talking to us, which is great, because I know that me personally, because I'm a very emotional person, I've really missed the interaction with customers and just being able to chat to people and help people, and people are starting to have more time for that now, and particularly over the last couple of weeks, we've definitely seen a change in that. But yeah, I don't know if you guys sort of experienced sort of similar things, or you have anything to add to sort of how you've seen things.
I just remember, I remember kind of once everything started sort of going into lockdown, I remember having sort of quite a few conversations with people, and I remember sort of seeing it on sort of social media as well, as a lot of people being contacted by kind of edtech companies, offering to kind of solve all their problems at this time, or being the tool to fix everything at this time, and you know, people feeling a bit kind of sort of overwhelmed and swamped by that. And I remember just thinking, actually, we need to be you know, need to be really realistic about this, and when we're having the conversations with people, and you know, how we you know, our timings for when we go and speak to our customers, because they just, you know, are so time poor. And you know, the truth is that, you know, Vevox isn't going to solve every single problem with kind of teaching online at this time, but it can help with, you know, really help with certain aspects, like you know, engagement, and bringing the you know, bringing a virtual audience into and feeling part of a you know, a class, doing knowledge checking and you know, things like that. And you know, we also made a really you know, a conscious decision right at the beginning that actually we just wanted to help people and make sure that if anyone wanted to or needed to use you know, Vevox during this time, that we could just, you know, make it available and, you know, open it up to people. I know, you know, Izzy, you were able to support a lot of people just by giving them you know, we ran a promotion where we were doing a free upgrade from our free account to an individual account until the end of August. I know you were able to help a lot of people with that.
Yeah, so obviously we introduced this upgrade, I think it was beginning of April, I think, so a few months ago now. But yeah, we just wanted to, you know, help anyone in any way that we could. Obviously, like Joe said, we're not going to fix everyone's problems, but by introducing this free upgrade, we could at least, you know, open people's, you know, minds to what they could potentially use Vevox for. Also, like Joe and Amy have said, we've seen a massive spike in signups and usage, so it's really good to see everyone, you know, finally getting settled into what they could be using now and in September. So yeah, by introducing this free upgrade, it's definitely helped a lot of people, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, it has been really good to see. I think from all sides of the business, we've all been interested in seeing what people have been doing. And I think one of the things that we've definitely noticed is that you know, people are trying to work in new ways, and using Vevox online is something that some people aren't familiar with because they're so used to teaching face to face. I guess we wanted to take this opportunity to try and talk with you all about how people have been using Vevox and kind of transitioning more to working online. So I don't know whether who wants to start about talking about the experiences people have been sharing with us about how they've been using Vevox alongside other tools that they already use, like Teams, Panopto, things like that. Let's open it up to you guys as to who wants to kind of share what experiences people have been sharing with you.
Yeah, I've got sort of a more sort of simpler approach to how you could move from your sort of face-to-face traditional lectures to incorporated Vevox online. One of the institutions that we work with, the University of Southampton, I'm sure a lot of people will share the same tools that they use, but two of the tools that they use is Blackboard Collaborate and Panopto. And previous to March, you know, they were mainly using us for face-to-face or incorporated with face-to-face lectures for their delivery there, and engagement using the sort of polling and Q&A for discussion or questions. But what we saw after the pandemic was people were still using us with those same tools, so still using us with Panopto. Panopto is not new to them. They were using it for lecture capture face-to-face, and now they're using Panopto in a very different way. They're using it where they're recording themselves, mainly for pre-recorded lectures, at least initially during the period. And they're using Vevox alongside those Panopto pre-recorded sessions. So they're using us for the survey functionality, so allowing them to sort of test their knowledge after they've viewed the lecture, but also allowing a way for students still to ask questions, generally in the anonymous mode, as they're watching those pre-recorded sessions. Then for their sort of synchronous sessions, generally there can be smaller, but also lectures being delivered live through Blackboard Collaborate. They're using us for the polling. In fact, exactly the same as they would for a face-to-face lecture, just using the polling, using the Q&A. So really, the way they use us with Blackboard Collaborate is exactly the same as they would in a live classroom. It's just they're using Blackboard Collaborate to put that feed out there, or that they're using it as their conferencing tool. You know, today we're using GoToWebinar. It's exactly the same. You know, you would use Vevox as you're seeing us use it now. So yeah, so that's quite a nice sort of example of how it was quite easily transitioned for them in their use. But I don't know if you guys have got, I'm sure some other examples, maybe something slightly different that you guys could share.
Yeah, so go on, Izzy, after you.
Yes, so I've got just more of a case study with using Vevox alongside Zoom. So I spoke with a lecturer from Dublin City University, who we have had an account with since, I think it was January this year. So obviously they had a couple of months before the pandemic outbreak for using Vevox face-to-face. But obviously when everything moved to online, they started using well, first of all, they started just using Zoom just for their lectures, but obviously there's no way of tracking student engagement when you can't, see students necessarily, or, they could have their screen on but not be paying attention. So, there's a lecturer who I spoke to, she started using Vevox at the beginning of her sessions just for more of a knowledge checker, so just checking people's understanding, where they are in a certain subject. With them results, she would then tailor the rest of her lecture. She'd use polls in the Q&A to gather opinion and feedback. She'd mentioned that it is mainly in the anonymous mode, which is really good, for when students don't necessarily want to put their hand up and want to broadcast their opinion because, they feel like it might be, judged in any way. But yeah, that was really good. Obviously, like Amy said, she'd just be sharing her screen on Zoom like we are doing now for polls and for the Q&A. But yeah, so she mentioned that she is a lecturer in more of a practical course. So she teaches physiotherapists for sports games. So, on the side of the pitch, medical team. But when sports stopped at the university, obviously that was when they could no longer do their practical courses. So, using, that's when mainly interactions stopped within the students. So using Vevox again just helped bring the students back together and, just helping rather than feeling all on their own.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad I let you go first because it leads in quite nicely to mine. So one of the things that one of the things I really like actually about sort of Teams and Zoom is the ability to ability to sort of use breakout rooms and to create sort of smaller groups within certain sessions, either being run through Zoom or channels, channels set up within Teams. And I think that Teams has very recently actually released a sort of dedicated breakout room feature, which I haven't actually managed to have a look at yet, but I'm quite interested to. And a couple of people that I've been sort of speaking to over the last few months have been using these kind of breakout features, and actually taking what would be quite a large class and actually breaking them out into smaller breakouts to do group work and have group discussions in those breakouts, and then using Vevox almost as the tool, the glue that kind of links all of those rooms together. So actually you have a single Vevox session, a bit like like we've got today, running, and you ask those groups to submit their findings, their conversations, the ideas that they're coming up with into that into Vevox. And then when you come back into that sort of larger group, you might then do a bit of a crowdsourcing exercise. So getting people to like their favorite comments, bringing the most liked ones up to the top, and then very quickly you've actually done an exercise that's got people working in smaller groups, actually having face-to-face conversations with their peers, but then through the crowdsourcing, bringing some of the best ideas to the fore, and then perhaps even then discussing them even further and taking those ideas further, having sort of more conversations around it. So I really like actually that kind of functionality that you get within Teams and Zoom with the breakout rooms, and then the ability to use Vevox almost to kind of bring those those rooms together. So it's sort of quite a nice example of using Vevox alongside other technologies such as Zoom and Teams.
There's definitely been, I've been kind of looking through the questions and comments that have been coming in, and there's definitely a theme around how to encourage interactivity and how to, someone's asked the question, can you share tips on encouraging students to engage with the app when remote? It's much easier when in person, so want to make sure I get as many joining in as possible. Do any of you guys, have you got any tips that you can share about how to make sure when you're not in the same room as them, how can you convey how important it is to get onto the app and how to really make it like the thing to do when you're starting off your session?
I mean, if I could sort of start, I think it's really important to however long your session is to make sure that you're you're reminding people that the facility's there. And then it's also probably about deciding before the lecture how and when you're going to use Vevox. So if it's going to be something that you're going to be using throughout, then you need to be potentially letting people know throughout the session that it's there. Actually giving some encouragement for things. So we should be doing it now as part of our as part of this session. So one of the things I would say to everyone listening in is if any of the things that we're talking about you've had similar experiences of, please do send in those comments within the Vevox platform. And it's about deciding on the right tool to use, and letting people know right at the beginning and throughout that it's there.
Yeah, someone's actually asked a really interesting question that's just come in. Sorry to cut anyone off that was just about to jump in with something, but someone's asked the question. I'm going to try and find it on the Q&A board, but it's one of the most recent questions, so it might not have that many likes, and we've got this sorted by likes. But someone's asked, if using alongside a VLE, would you recommend that students have Vevox open on their phones or on another browser tab, or does it matter? Do you find, what approach have you found, have customers shared with you what approach works best, by using it on a separate phone or using it on the same device that they may be viewing a lecture on?
I mean, I think there's a twofold approach. That I would say it doesn't matter. My preference, I would say, generally would be to get them to join on their phones or a secondary device, so that they can concentrate on the content. That's if it's a live lecture. So if it's a synchronous lecture, get them to take part on a secondary device just so they can have their full screen, because I'm guessing a lot of students maybe don't have a dual screen or a second screen maybe like we do. However, we do have a new beta feature which enables a split screen view, so that you can see Vevox on one side and whatever your feed is on the other. So that could be a YouTube video or Panopto recording. We also have some new integration with Zoom. So basically they click on one link and it opens up both feeds. So that is something that we're introducing to the platform. As I said, it's still beta at the moment, but if that's of interest, then we can enable that for sort of any of our customers that are interested in having a look at that. That would probably be the optimal approach, using that new beta feature. But otherwise, if just using us traditionally, I do think the approach of, as it says on the present view screen, join at vevox.app and go to the code. Obviously, you can create a direct link. If you're doing synchronous learning, your activities are going to be different. So it might be that you're using the surveys, so you want to send them a direct link to your survey. So you just do vevox.app/meeting code/survey, and that will take them directly into the activity that you set them. So how you engage with your student will depend on what the activity is that you're doing in answer.
Yeah, that's great. There's a couple of questions that I've seen coming in asking about Vevox and Microsoft Teams, and not to be too much of a tease, but I think we've got some information we'd like to share. But shall we leave that till a little bit? I know you guys have got some more stuff you want to bring up, so there is some news to share on that, and we'll get to that. We'll definitely talk around that. But I'm just conscious of time. We're already 20 past 12, and I know that there's more information that you want to share with people. So in terms of along the student engagement line, what kind of innovative initiatives have you seen educators using, and how they're using Vevox in their sessions? Have they been using it in a different way, trying it with different things? What have you been experiencing?
Do you want to go first, Josh?
No, you go, Izzy. If you could set me up again, that'd be nice.
All right. So one of the most recent things I have seen is, so we work with STEM Learning, and they recently done a series of webinars live on YouTube, which is actually, I think it was the first set of live webinars I'd actually seen. And once they had different topics. So I think they had 11 different webinars over a couple of days, something like that. But they then used the Vevox Q&A to gather all of their questions and their feedback and everything like that. I think they had maybe a session where they'd answer the Q&A, but then they could also download the data export and have all the Q&A questions there to then answer in whichever way they'd like. They could send that out, they could email people, whatever suits them. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the live webinar and then Vevox being used in that way as well.
And actually that example is quite similar to how people are using us with other platforms. It's really either that it can be live or asynchronous feed, and then us alongside. I think in their case they used us with unmoderated questions, and then the survey feature for feedback. But yeah, it doesn't have to be YouTube, that feed, that it could be Blackboard or Panopto, or whatever the tool is that you're using. But yeah, it was a really nice sort of use case, sort of seeing it with the live YouTube video, something that we hadn't seen someone do before. Yeah.
Cool. So something that something that I'm kind of talking to a lot of people about at the moment is that there's a feeling that they're probably going to have to sort of change what I would call sort of the traditional style of delivering a lecture. So that might be delivering a broadcast, a lecture to potentially hundreds of students, and some lectures I hear can be 1 hour, 2 hours. I've even heard of sort of lectures being sort of 3 hours, 3 hours long. And actually, if you're having to do that in an online environment, I think there's a realization that actually that's not the best way of delivering delivering that lecture when it's online in one whole go. So I think people are looking at ways of breaking up that the content that would be covered during that time into sort of smaller sort of more manageable chunks. and potentially breaking it up into a combination of kind of flipped learning, sort of asynchronous, sort of style of learning, with some live elements, with some live elements built in. So there's a nice sort of case study I heard about from someone from the University of Southampton, whereby they will, every week they will release their kind of teaching material for that week, and that might be a combination of recorded videos, reading material, papers to read, whatever it might be, all released during the week. And students would then watch that and work on that in their own time during the week as they find time to do it. But then what they were also doing is they were using Vevox alongside that, and having the Q&A switched on like we've got today, but actually having moderation switched on to the Q&A. So whereas today any message that anyone sends in comes straight into the app for everyone to be able to see, actually you can switch on moderation, which means that messages aren't automatically published. And what that then allows you to do is to collect messages and, more importantly, questions during the week. So anyone who wants to ask a question anonymously without sort of fear of asking a stupid question can do so at whatever point they are watching that teaching material. But you're not letting the message board potentially get out of control while you're not keeping an eye on it. And then what they were doing is they were then having a weekly drop-in session that might last for an hour, that was just run through, I think it was run through Zoom. People would just join that live drop-in. The moderation was switched off on Q&A, so all the any questions that were then asked could come straight in. But the first thing that they did was he ran a knowledge checking quiz to make sure that the understanding of the material that had been released and the teaching that had been released was at the level it needed to be. And if it wasn't, then the live drop-in was an opportunity to potentially address that. And if it was, then the live drop-in was an opportunity to answer any questions that had come in during the week, but then also answer any questions that were coming in during that during that drop-in. So to me, it's just a nice nice sort of blend between that kind of live face-to-face style of teaching, but then also the kind of the asynchronous side as well.
Yeah. We've got a couple more minutes before we actually move to the Q&A. So I don't know whether any of you want to run through any ideas about what feedback have you been getting about what people have been planning for September? Have there been any changes in kind of through going through this experience? Are they now, because they are planning, what initiatives have they been planning, and how's that going?
Yeah, so I believe a few universities are planning for practical courses to go back in September. Obviously, you can only do so much online for practical courses. There's only so much a video can explain. So hopefully when the rules, how much the rules relax, I'm not sure, but they'll be sending students in to carry on with their practical sides of their course. Which will be really good, because that's obviously definitely a main thing about their course, is being able to do the practical side. So hopefully the rules will, the social distance will reduce to allow more people to go in at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had a chat with one of our learning technologists, I think it was last week, and they were sort of saying, that they're having to make a number of different plans, because if it's 1 meter social distancing, which, that there is talk of it going down to that, it's a very different scenario to how many students they can fit in the classroom. And in his particular example, they were looking at that would allow 5 to 6 hours of student face-to-face time, whereas the 2-hour distancing would allow 1 to 2 hours face-to-face time for students. But different universities, different approaches. Some of the universities that we're working with, all of the seminars are going to be face-to-face on campus, and all of the lectures delivered online. So I think it all depends. For different universities, different approaches, but what people tend to be looking for is tools that can be used across all different scenarios. So whether it's synchronous, asynchronous, face-to-face, online, what tools can complement all of those different scenarios, because teaching is going to be very different now. It's going to be very mixed and blended. you know, one of the positive things for us is that, you know, we can support all of those different methods of teaching, and nice for the students to be able to interact with our tool across however, you know, the people are having to teach, and that will change, you know, and the volume of face-to-face teaching, I assume, will probably increase over time, and we can transition with that. So yes, that's sort of something that we're hearing, is people trying to find or make sure that they're investing in tools that can be used in, you know, different types of teaching scenarios, as we are going to be seeing change over the next year or so. Whether or not, I don't think it will necessarily go back to what it was. You know, lots of people are saying that it won't, and that's a really positive thing. But yeah, that's the sort of change that we're sort of hearing about.
I love hearing about you know, the kind of the opportunity that Vevox potentially offers to you know, sort of bridge the gap between sort of hybrid and kind of sort of face-to-face you know, teaching. So you know, where you might potentially have a you know, a setup where some people are face-to-face and some people are watching you know, remotely, but joining the same lecture. Actually, when you use a tool like Vevox for you know, people to ask their questions or respond to polls, actually everyone, whether you're in the room or not, has the same voice, has an equal power to ask a question. And you know, particularly when it's anonymous as well, you know, that question that, you know, gets asked carries the same weight whether you're watching remotely you know, or not. And yeah, to me, that's a really, you know, nice, powerful thing that, you know, Vevox can do. Yeah. I'm conscious of time.
Really nicely well answered. Sorry.
I was going to say, I'm conscious of time too, and I know we've got a few things that we want to kind of wrap up with, and we definitely want to look at the Q&A board and see what questions and comments have been coming in. But one thing, obviously, some of you guys have been asking about, are we doing anything with Microsoft Teams? You know, what is happening? Is anything being developed? And something has been developed, and it is something that is now available in the Teams. I think they call it the Teams Store. It's the Teams App Store.
I think it's the App Store.
Yeah. So if you search Vevox now, there will be as a Teams app available. And I think rather than talk through what that can do now and how it works, what would you guys say is the best thing? Should people, if they are curious, I would say go and explore. But also, if anyone's got any questions, to contact you at education@vevox.com. And if you've got any specific questions around how it can be used and how it works, I think that would be a great starting point for people, is to definitely explore, go and have a look for it and find it in the store. But absolutely, you know, the guys here want to support you in using that, and it's been something that's been on our radar for a while. We listened, we've heard what people have been saying, and yeah, we now have created something for you guys. So hopefully that's some good news. And to those of you that asked in the Q&A, you'll be pleased.
There was just a point that just came in, actually, saying that it's not appearing for Teams. It was actually it got approval from Microsoft and released into the App Store this morning. So I think you may have to restart Teams. If you've had Teams open all morning, it may not, you know, appear in there. But I've checked, and it is there this morning.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think some people may be seeing it and some people might not be. So definitely a good shout to close down or refresh Teams, just so you've got the latest information there. I did see a couple of questions came in about the QR codes. People were curious about the QR code and how that's generated. I'm just trying to go back to find the question that somebody asked. Just scrolling back. Does Vevox create the QR code automatically when you want to create quizzes and polls, etc., the same as you've done on this webinar?
Yeah, so it's a functionality that sits within the within the presentation view. So actually, I can show you how you get to it. So within the presentation view, there's an option under the customization here, and you can choose whether you have a QR code on or off, which is exactly what we did before this session. And then you can make it large by clicking on it.
Excellent demonstration, Joe.
There you go.
Just trying to scroll through. There's been some great comments in here, and I love that people are sharing and replying to other people's comments, because that's how I think Vevox works best. Is it doesn't always need to be the person hosting that can answer the question. You guys get to help answer each other's questions as well. Do shout, guys, if there's any questions that you've seen.
I just thought the one here, we kind of talked around it, like one of the main concerns, lack of interaction from students. I mean, one thing that some people may not have seen, because it did come out within functionality of our platform just in April, I think it was the quizzing functionality. So that could be a really nice way of introducing students to the platform, engaging them with it, getting them familiar with it, particularly in sort of Welcome Week, Freshers Week, whatever we call it now. Yeah, doing a little quiz. You know, I was just speaking to one of our learning technologists yesterday, and she's looking at running sort of weekly quizzes for her staff. One, it's a nice engagement tactic, but also encourages staff to interact and experience Vevox and see how it can be used, which then helps them feel confident that it's a tool they want to use with their students. We do have our own pub quiz as well. You're welcome to join our own pub quiz, which we run on a Friday. Although we're taking a little bit of a break, I think, for a couple of weeks over the summer. You know, we're looking to start that up again for the new term, so you're welcome to join that as well. But yeah, that's quite a nice feature to help engage the students and get them to participate.
I've run so many family quizzes over the last few weeks that I forgot it only came out in April.
Yeah.
In our minds, we've had it forever, but it's a while to get them. Someone's asked a question, I don't know if this is more of a technical thing. Can you advise about the likely time lag between participants posing questions or polling and their interaction appearing on the board? I guess that also depends on whether or not you're using moderation.
About likely time lag between participants. I don't know if this is more about, so some systems do have lags. So what we have heard is that if you're broadcasting something via Panopto, or another lecture capture system, there does tend to be a time lag with when students are actually watching it to when it's being broadcast. So it can mean that, say, our system, if it's running alongside, may be running a lot quicker. So you might actually get the student might get the vote before the lecturers even looks like they've posted it through the Panopto feed. The lag does tend to more happen, from what I've heard, with lecture capture systems. So it's really only relevant if you're doing synchronous learning, because obviously with the asynchronous that wouldn't matter. But yeah, it's more, I've heard about it more with tools like Panopto. So it is something to bear in mind if you're doing a live broadcast through something like Panopto. But I haven't experienced it particularly badly when using it with a web conferencing tool. It may be very slight, but not a big problem.
I've got a question I want to answer, Sophie.
Yes, no, go for it. You take control.
There's a question here about can the Q&A be saved? And actually, it kind of leads on to sort of a sort of slightly sort of broader topic, which is one of the things I really like about Vevox and the Q&A is that it can be saved. A Vevox session can be open indefinitely. It can be open for as long as you want. So actually you can have a single Vevox session running over the course of an entire module. You can have all of those questions that are sent in kept as a record and answered in your own time. And actually that differs quite a bit from the Q&A functionality that you might find within Zoom and Teams. Zoom meetings and Teams meetings, which are very much kind of in the moment, they're part of that single broadcast and part of that single session. That might be absolutely fine for the session that you're running, in which case use it. People will be identified, but that's okay. That might be okay for your session. But if you do want to have a Q&A board that can be open a bit longer, you do want to have a Q&A board that can be anonymous, and have the ability for people to be able to upvote and like comments. That's where you might want to think about actually using Vevox instead of the the inbuilt chat functionality that's within some of these other platforms.
And I think one thing that we actually have not demonstrated very well today is you can remove them from the board. So I don't. We answered that second one. So I don't know if Joe or Sophie, if you want to remove that one, that will still save to your data report, but you can remove it from the board, so you can manage it from the interactive present view as you're going through things.
Yeah,
Nice.
Thank you. So yeah, we're now at 40 minutes. There's just a couple of things that we wanted to wrap up with before we finish off. Amy has very kindly put an anonymous survey in the app, which we'd really appreciate you taking a couple of seconds to answer. As you know, we very much value your feedback and want to hear from you what you think. So please do take a moment just to answer those questions. I did see a couple of questions coming in about where can people hear more? Are these stories that we've been sharing available on the website or things like that? They're not necessarily available on the website, but we will be sending out this recording. So you will be able to review all of the information that we've been talking about. And if you have any specific questions about anything that you've heard today or want to explore more, then definitely the guys I know welcome you emailing them and getting in touch. And the best email for them to go direct to them is education@vevox.com. We've also sorry, go on, Izzy.
Sorry, I was going to say I posted the email address in the Q&A chat. So
thank you. And the last and final thing before I hand over, unless anyone else from the education team has got anything to say, is just we've got another Vevox update happening on the 9th of July. And we have got a webinar in the diary already for that, which will be on the 16th of July. The link to register for that is on the website, but I think if one of you guys, could post it in the Q&A board, that would be great. Just so if anyone wants to join that, they can. And I think, unless I've missed anything, that's it. Does anyone else want to leave with anything or have anything else they want to add before we go?
No, I think that's good. I would just add that, please do carry on sharing your stories of how you're getting on and how you're using, how you're using Vevox. The most innovative stories we hear about how Vevox is being used come from our educators, and we love to hear them. And yeah, just please carry on sharing them.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, guys, for sharing all of that information. And thank you to everyone that joined for sending in your questions and comments. It's been great hearing from you what you think. And yeah, just keep in touch with us and hopefully we'll speak to you all soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.